You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, to all of the streamers. We wait just a moment. I wait about a minute, and we're almost a minute now with the intro for everyone to lock on to the live stream and get situated. How are you doing, Cynthia?
I'm great, actually. Yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. I'm going to pause for just a second, and then we'll go ahead and start the podcast. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, the Billy Dees podcast is primarily a commentary and an interview program. On Thursday nights, it's commentary, opinion, and all kinds of good stuff. We're live on X and Rumble and also Facebook. So we're live there. And with me on Thursday nights is Cynthia Elliott. Cynthia.
Hello, Billy.
You're all smiles again today. It must be that Florida sunshine.
It is. I need the sun. And I love being in Florida, so.
Yeah, Florida's pretty cool. Too many bugs down there. I've actually never been to Florida, but I've always heard lots of bugs in certain areas, and I don't like bugs. I kind of prefer the West, the dry West, like Arizona and all those kind of places. No plants, no no hay fever, none of that kind of stuff. Just air and sand.
You would love San Diego. I don't know if you've ever been there, but
no. I mean, not there. But anyway, busy day in the news. Lots of stuff happening with the confirmations. We're going to talk about that, and also some of the comments that people have made. This has been. I'm going to say that of Trump's nominations that he put forth for members of his team, that RFK has probably been one of the most controversial, and maybe Cash Patel, maybe a little bit controversial, but RFK has been one of those lightning rods ever since he ran for president earlier in 2024. And I believe he's got some good common sense things to say. Absolutely, 100%. I don't know if you've listened to any of his interviews at depth, but I have a hard time not liking him. I think he's very good. I don't want to delve into the vaccines and all that stuff in depth, but basically, I think he's been misrepresented. As far as I know, he's never spoke against one of the common, vaccines that we all know about, whether it be flu or, any of those types of ones. Obviously, the school inoculations, measles, and things like that. I think where the problem has been on some of these newer ones that have been rushed out and employ a different style of working biologically, let's just put it that way. And he was questioning a lot of the safety in terms of, and I don't know why you can't even discuss it. You can't even discuss it. And at least during the height of COVID, you couldn't even debate it. You couldn't even say, well, what about testing, or what about this or that? Everything was just shut down. So how much of that is what you might say anti-vax, and how much of that is just him being misrepresented? I'm sure there's varying opinions out there. But that has been one of his things. He's also very much been an advocate for the food that we eat, and I don't know how you could argue that. How could you possibly say that the food we are eating today is healthy or healthier than what we did in years past? And it should be. You would think as we progress, we should find more and creative ways to eat healthy food. But we're going the opposite direction. There's so much processed food, and what's worse is a lot of the ingredients in these foods, you don't even know what they put in them half the time. Yeah. When you do find a list, you can't even pronounce them. Can't even pronounce the ingredients. A lot of these things, like these high intensity sweeteners, like high fructose corn syrup, and all this, he's been very much talking about that are harming our society. Now, he has drawn a line between a lot of these things and autism, which here again, that's a subject for debate. I don't think there's any question that there's more autism now than there was in years past. Just since 2000, there's been a enormous increase. And when I was in grade school, I don't remember anybody having that kind of a condition. I'm sure they existed, but I went to a very large grade school, and there were very few kids with the kinds of problems that you hear about in mass today, whether it be severe allergic reactions to things that could possibly kill you, like peanuts and all this. All these types of different diseases that you're hearing about now that I didn't even know existed. And the developmental, easy for me to say, issues that a lot of kids are having today, and adults. There's absolutely no question that adults way overweight in comparison with what we had during the 1970s. Just huge numbers. It's not just reflected in the pictures that you see of people on the beach in the 1970s. It's certainly there.
Yeah.
But even if you look at the data on this, very much an obese nation. And I think a lot of that has to do with all these heavily processed foods.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, and I know you're very passionate about this. So, what say you?
So I think Robert Kennedy's problem from the very beginning was that he made his ambition known in his own party, where he was not welcome, and a party where, it's become pretty evident, and they're all guilty of doing this. They're all guilty of taking money. They're very guilty of taking money from Big Pharma. And so he had not only the media, which is financed by Big Pharma. A huge majority of the biggest advertisers at the mainstream media are Big Pharma companies. And so the minute he started speaking out and wrote a book, you're talking about a party that's been financed by Big Pharma. On top of that, a news media that's been financed by Big Pharma. And as we know from Doge's work, a lot of shenanigans were going on there to orchestrate outcomes that particular people wanted. And so I think they weaponized the things that he did say and bent them to the point where they're really distorted. He actually has. I've listened to him deeply, and while I don't always agree with everything he says, the vast majority of what he says is steeped in science. If you look at graphs starting from the 1970s to now, the parallel between the obesity epidemic and chronic disease in America and the advent of the garbage that they sell in those rows in the grocery store. If you want to eat healthy, stay out of those rows in the middle of the grocery store, because they're filled with toxic foods and poisons. And it's just awful what American companies will put in the food here, because the FDA lets them, because they pay the FDA. It's a big vicious circle, and so I think they really went after him for many reasons. They thought they saw him as a threat to the future presidential seat, that they had already decided who was going to occupy it, and that was Biden, and then it was Kamala, and they've continued to go after him. And even after Trump won, the Big Pharma is really threatened by him, and they should be, but they need to be, because in America we pay far more for life-saving drugs than they do in other parts of the world, and these are companies that are often American companies. So yeah, they're going after him with big guns, but I think he's an intelligent man, and I think we need an overhaul. The rise in obesity, the rise in chronic disease, the rise in autism, I believe, and just from my own research, are directly related to some of the awful medicines that we have, which some of them are, and the testing is, as we've seen, it turns out oftentimes to be BS. And then on top of that, the food, which is processed. And I might say one more thing: the DSM, the diagnostic manual here in America, is almost 100% of the people who research things like depression and anxiety are financed by Big Pharma, and 50% of the rest of the researchers who work on the diagnostic manual for this country are sponsored by Big Pharma. So we have a huge problem.
Absolutely. No one can disagree with that. One of the things, he has brought on some of the criticism by his own actions. I think one of the bear in the park was a weird story. That was a weird story. And you got to keep in mind, he did this like 10 years ago or something like that. He's 70 now. So he was my age then, roughly. And, this wasn't a frat boy prank. That was odd. There's been a number of other things too. So anyway, that's he's different, that is for sure. But in the 52-48 vote, Robert F. Kennedy is now the Health and Human Services Secretary for the President, Donald Trump. And this 52-48 vote was largely along party lines. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell once again joined Democrats to oppose this particular nomination. What do you have a reaction about Mitch? Let's hear it.
Because Mitch McConnell doesn't know what room he's in, much less what cities he's in. And I would really love to know who's marching him around, who's scooting him around in a wheelchair, or who's pushing him out there, because the number of falls and verbal stumbles and weird behavior, it's obvious that he's being puppeted by someone. And I don't mean that to be cruel. I really don't. But come on, he is not. He doesn't even, you can see him when he's talking he doesn't even know where he is. Half the time he doesn't even know what he's saying. It's worse than Biden.
Yeah, and that's an interesting lead-in because I have a clip here for you. Trump was asked by CNN's Caitlin Collins. Now, you know who she is. Caitlin asked Donald Trump about, Mitch voting against RFK. And she points out that he cited, his own battles with polio and other things. And what's interesting in this clip, not only does Donald Trump do his usual shtick about somebody he doesn't like,
he is good for comments.
Yeah, but he manages to get in a dig at Caitlin while he's answering the question. So here we go.
RFK Jr. as the next health secretary, citing conspiracy theories. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I feel sorry for Mitch, and I was one of the people that led. He wanted to go to the end, and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped 10 years ago mentally, in my opinion. He'd let the Republican Party go to hell. If I didn't come along, the Republican Party wouldn't even exist right now. Mitch McConnell never really had it. He had an ability to raise money because of his position as leader, which anybody could do. You could do it even, and that's saying a lot. But the fact is that he raised money and he gave a lot of money to senators, and so he had a little loyalty based on the fact that as leader you could raise a lot of money.
Okay, there we go.
You could do it too.
Even you could do it. That's how you put it. Yeah. Caitlin is, I've come to find out a lot of people she rubs the wrong way.
I don't know. I have to be honest. I have no idea which one she is.
Okay. Yeah. She's young and she's very sharp looking and very well spoken, but she has this little edge, this little aggravating edge, I guess. And she's given Trump a hard time on more than one occasion. So she's a target for him. And I just found that he just kind of, even for you.
Do you think that's on accident, Billy? So I don't really like mainstream media, just as a rule, because they're such fame hookers. You think she's giving him a hard time and she has an edge by accident? Please, that's just part of the playbook. It's like the ladies from The View. If they weren't constantly saying stupid shit, we wouldn't be hearing about it.
Well, they're definitely. I mean, the people on The View are just way out there. I mean,
that's purposeful. They wouldn't get any ink or airtime or commentary. Like, it's the thing that keeps that show alive. That show would have died 10 years ago if those women weren't saying the most absurd shit. Excuse my French. Sorry.
No, that's okay. They are off the charts. I would take Caitlin over any of those. Also, within the last day, Tulsi Gabbard. She was confirmed, and she will be serving as the director of national intelligence. And she is a former Democrat, which is interesting. And she has become a part of Trump's inner circle. Now, she has had her own sets of controversies, including her views on Russia and the Syrian dictator. and also Edward Snowden. So she has said some things that are controversial. So as a whole, I like Tulsi. I've spent, and here again, I kind of got to know Tulsi, not personally, but as a figure during the campaign of RFK Jr. And there was a lot of speculation early on if she could become the vice presidential nominee for either Kennedy at the time or possibly Trump. And that would have been cool, her as vice president on the Trump ticket. And I actually like J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is from Ohio. When he ran his campaign here, I'm not sure I warmed up to him right away. And I'm still not gung-ho on him. I mean, I don't know him that well. But I like him a lot better than I did when he first ran the Senate campaign here in Ohio.
Yeah.
Now, with all that being said, I do believe that Tulsi is a good candidate. I feel more comfortable with her, actually. I have less reservation about her than I do Kennedy. Okay, and I'm not against Kennedy, but Tulsi I feel very good about. A lot of these criticisms, I understand where they are coming from. But by the same token, these things with Russia, it wasn't that long ago, if you remember the debate between Mitt Romney and Obama. Mitt Romney cautioned that Russia was going to be a problem in the coming years, and Obama's comeback was the '80s just called and they want their foreign policy back.
I'm sorry, that's really funny. I mean, it is funny.
Yeah. So now all of a sudden, Russia or Russia, as President Trump says, Russia. Is the boogeyman as far as the Democrats are concerned. This whole thing with the Ukraine, I don't know if there is what you might call a good guy on that whole story. There's bad and worse, and how you want to interchange them is entirely up to you. But I will say that I understand where that's coming from. But here again, anybody that says anything positive in regard to handling Russia is now somehow a traitor, according to the Democrats.
Yeah, God forbid people actually speak their opinion and have a conversation about it. That's part of the stupidity of that is like, oh, if I don't agree with you, then let's go to extremes. You must be a Russia supporter. It's like, no, I actually would just like to have a conversation about it. Like, I think that's kind of where we really need to get, where people can actually debate and have a conversation without painting people in these corners. I'm a big fan of Tulsi. I think she's fierce. She's amazing. She whipped Kamala's backside. That's why they ran her out of the Democratic Party, because they didn't want competition. I would be really happy when rich people can't select politicians. Like, I think J.D. Vance was an example of that. I actually like him as vice president. I think he's really great as vice president, because vice president needs to be somebody that's not wanting to steal the show.
Yeah, sure.
And I think Tulsi was actually too much of a star for that, at the time. But anyway, I completely lost my train of thought.
Well, you were talking about Vance and Tulsi, and I don't know.
No. So what, there's several politicians where they get picked out by somebody with money. This is the AOC, is my understanding, is how she got her career, is that she got tapped by Soros. And now that could be wrong, but that's what I've heard. And oftentimes they get on my nerves because they haven't actually worked their way up. But J.D. Vance is very, very intelligent and very linguistically powerful. Anyway, he's won me over. Tulsi's great, but I think she was going to be, she's got such great experience in the military that I think the role she's been chosen for is actually excellent for her.
Yes, she won, I guess past confirmation, I should say is a better way of putting it, 52-48. Gabbard will oversee 18 agencies within the U.S. intelligence community, and she will serve as the president's top advisor on intelligence matters. Edward Snowden, that's a topic in and of and by itself. I have mixed emotions about that. I understand that Edward Snowden brought a lot of things forward that we may not know had it not been for him. That's fine. Okay, I'm okay with that. But that can't be the excuse for people to break ranks and go against the rules that protect our intelligence. Every time somebody's got a good point to make, okay, well, I'll just put it all out there. You have the potential of harming the United States in terms of its security, and you have the potential of putting other people in very, very serious danger. So I don't know that that's a precedent that should be championed. And I know a lot of people champion that. And they'll make exceptions. They'll say, well, he didn't do that. He didn't do this. He didn't. Yeah, but the point is here again, I keep saying, and this is something I'll often come back to. It's the situation. Okay. It's the circumstances that you have to look at. Take the names out of it. Okay. In this particular case, the name is Snowden. In the next time around, it might be Obama or somebody else. Is it okay to reveal things if you feel your cause is justified? Is it okay to break the confidentiality of top secret information if you feel you're making a wonderful point or you're doing some good? Is that the precedent that should be set? Go ahead, Cynthia. If you have a
Yeah, I always think of that movie with Russell Crowe about the Jeffrey. I'm going to forget his name. The guy who was he was like a science teacher or scientist, and he tried to show that the tobacco industry did know that they were poisoning people, and they destroyed his life for a while. But he ultimately, the truth ultimately came out. I'm really torn because I really believe that if you sign something saying that you're going to behave, in a certain way and not put people, American citizens in danger, then you should stick to that. But there is a line there where, which side, if death and danger and reaches a certain pinnacle, it's like, I don't know, what would you do if it was you? If you
Yeah.
knew something really bad was going on and you felt like the truth was really necessary, I don't know. I can go back and forth with that.
Yeah, you can, and it's just like with anything else. When you get into a business like that, you're going to find out bad things. It's guaranteed. Okay, it's like that old adage about the less you know about how the sausage is made, the best. The more happier you're going to be. Well, that's when you go into sausage making. That's you get it. You learn how to do it, and it's not pleasant. It's not good. You know that from the get go. So, it's a tough one. I would agree with that. One of the things that happened this week, and I don't know if I can accurately gauge the media coverage on this. I have seen major news organizations covering this online. It's gotten a mention a few places that I've noticed in broadcast. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just not checking these things at the right time. But I'm talking about Nancy Mace, and she's from South Carolina, and she's a congresswoman, and she delivered a 53-minute speech. And as far as I know, I don't ever recall something happening like this in the chamber. Most of the news reports say similar things. It's a precedent that is new. And she is describing herself. One of the phrases she used was she is going scorched earth. And Mace has accused her ex-fiancé of very, very bad crimes, including physical assault, rape, and sex trafficking against her and other women. Let me just give you a taste of that. I have some edits from that. Now, here again, and she had a very long speech. You can find it online. Here's just a brief couple snippets of it just to give you an idea of the tone. Here we go.
I found some photos of what appeared to be a teenager undressed in the kind of underwear a child would wear. I saw another video of another woman who was undressed, clearly on a camera, unaware she was being filmed. She was slender, and she had long brown hair. I turned up the volume to hear if there was audio. I heard my voice. I zoomed in on the video, and that woman was me. My entire body was paralyzed, and I couldn't move. Were my feet on the floor? Was I breathing? I have no idea. This monster stole my body.
Okay, it's hard not to listen to that and feel compassion. And here again, we have no way of knowing at this time if these allegations are true. She has claimed that she has evidence, and the prosecutors and the other law enforcement didn't cooperate. So, she took it to the floor there. And, I'm very much, we hear so much about the Me Too movement. And in principle, before it got politicized, I understand what it meant about believing accusers. Believing accusers, and here again, people who wanted to speak out against this twisted that. It doesn't mean you convict people without, due process on the basis of an accusation. What it means is you don't just ignore allegations. For example, some big shot businessman worth millions of dollars, he gets accused by a young woman who is addicted to drugs, and everybody just, oh well, she's a quote unquote drug addict. Who's going to listen to her, and blah blah blah. The whole thing is that's what the Me Too movement was about. That's what it means about believing these victims. It's not to convict people. It's to take these allegations seriously and investigate them before you just out of hand dismiss them. So in that respect, like I said, it's hard to listen to this and not feel compassion for Nancy Mace, whether you like her politically or not. Now, obviously, she's, she gets a lot of attention. She's picked some high profile issues to get involved with, like the trans in the bathrooms and all that shit. So, and I say that because it's, is this something we should be turning everything upside down for? Is how the bathrooms in the Congress building are used. I don't know that needs to be the hottest topic around. Now, if you believe one way or another about it, that's fine. Here again, that's all well and good. I just don't know if this should be taking over the national discussion. With that being said, go ahead, Cynthia.
I'm not a huge fan of hers because I pay attention to people's patterns. Look, I feel bad for anyone who's a victim. As you know, I've written books about human trafficking. My sister died due to human trafficking related issues, and so I'm a huge advocate for women's rights and a huge advocate for women being listened to. I'm not a huge fan of Nancy's because she has a history of going to a lot of trouble to get a lot of attention for herself. I'm not a fan of this shift I've seen in recent years. It was going on before AOC, but she definitely ushered it in, of doing whatever you can to make sure you get lots of ink and lots of time and attention from people. Like, I get it's their job to get reelected. I mean, I really thought it was their job to actually help run the country for the American people, but it's also their job to get a lot of attention for themselves. So that pattern of hers bothers me because I already had that issue with her, seeing that systematically with her. And I'm seeing that with a lot of people. Ever since Trump won, it's like a race for a handful of people to get as much time and attention. It's kind of grossing me out. I'll be honest with you. I've kind of turned a lot of media off recently because I'm finding it distasteful. I don't know if that was the appropriate venue. I don't know how I am a big believer in people paying for what they do in the legal system, but I don't know how I feel about the way that was handled in that they're convicted before a trial.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I get that sometimes women are forced. Like, I've had conversations myself as a woman where I knew I wasn't being believed because I was a young girl trying to, point out things that were happening to me because of my situation. And so I know what that feels like. I have a lot of sympathy, but I don't know how I feel about how this was done and how it was handled and the timing of it with all this other stuff going on, Doge related, and the American people. It just feels weird.
I like I said, I hope that these allegations are seriously checked out.
Yeah,
the people that she has accused have vehemently denied this. And I one part of this that I find a little odd is she got access to some of this stuff apparently because he had his phone locked, but he gave her the code apparently to get into the phone. Now, I don't know if I can't quite reconcile having that much horrible stuff on my phone would I hand it to somebody and say, yeah, here's my code, check it out? Now I re-listened to parts of this today before he went to air, and it seems like what she is saying is because she does have technical skills that he must have tried to hide them. And this is conjecture here because she made it clear that he didn't realize that she had technical skills, which implies to me he tried to hide them. But once she got into the phone, she found them through her knowledge of how things are deleted or what have you. So, all right, well, I'll accept that if that's the case, although I haven't heard somebody expressly say that. And I also want to say, too, that she has touched on a lot of areas regarding women, like, for example, and here again, I'm not going to debate it right now, but the whole idea of women's sports and, protecting women in sports, those are all issues that probably have a little bit more a proper place in our discussion than how the bathrooms are managed in the Capitol. So, I mean, she has touched on some issues that definitely impact people's lives, and
there's a pattern there, Billy. They're all hot button news issues.
No, absolutely.
She tends to touch on them when they're getting publicity or they're about to, and that goes with that whole pattern thing about her that bothers me. And I'm a pattern person. When I recognize patterns, I listen because it never lies.
Yeah. So anyway, for me, as someone who follows politics and who follows the media, and I'm very passionate about it, this is unprecedented. I can't recall any time, and it's not impossible, but I can't recall any time that on the federal level, you've had somebody on the floor in the chamber making allegations like this against American citizens. It's interesting.
The timing of it is really interesting with all of the stuff that's going on and the approvals of RFK and Tulsi and the Doge stuff that's been coming out and all those revelations. The timing of it just seems really weird.
Yeah.
And I realize how awful I sound. I'm sure some people are going to make all sorts of whatever. I don't care what people think. I've learned to speak my truth, and I have learned to point out things that I see as consistent patterns. And the whole thing is just kind of awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't mess with Cynthia. So, although you may recall last year I was the subject of a firestorm online, and all I did was talk about how the Democrats were on their way to losing from a marketing standpoint. It wasn't a partisan thing. I did this episode, I did this commentary about how they were messing up from a marketing standpoint. And of course, that episode blew up, hundreds of thousands of listens. And I had big name commentators coming after me. And it was very, I don't know how to put it. It was an analysis. So you and I have both gotten it. I think a lot of times you have an edge. You don't mind having a little edge, man. You throw it out there, which is good. That's absolutely fantastic. Speaking
that's just me being. I worked really hard to learn to be myself, and I am edgy, and I'm also a spiritual teacher, which is kind of a weird combination. But I think that's because spirituality is not about being nice; it's about being self-actualized, and self-actualized is about having an opinion. And we need more people to actually express what they really think and feel, and not what they think other people want to hear.
Exactly. Well, I got to tell you, we're gonna wrap up our last story with our good friend Donald Trump, and I got to tell you, man, he is. If you enjoy the public discourse, if you enjoy media relations, you'll have different opinions about whether it's good or bad. But there's absolutely no question that he knows how to stir shit up, and. I got this little clip here. I don't know if you've been following about, Canada. There's the tariffs, and there's this talk, and I'm going to ask you about it on the other side of the clip of Canada becoming a state.
I love Donald Trump just for this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, here we go. You'll pay close attention to how he addresses Justin Trudeau.
negotiations going with Canada? There was obviously a delay in implementing those tariffs.
I spoke to Governor Trudeau on numerous occasions, and we'll see what happens. But it just sets up so good for them. Look, the people would pay much less tax than they're paying right now. They'd have perfect military protection. They don't have any military protection because and you take a look at what's going on out there. You have Russian ships, you have China ships, you have Chinese ships, you have a lot of ships out there, and people are in danger. This is a different world today. It's a different world. They need our protection.
Okay. Yeah, funny.
There's nothing better than a president that doesn't need to get reelected.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, too, is some people have called it chaos management. That's the term I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. And I've worked for people that are chaos managers, and they believe that if they create this tornado, okay, that the tornado rises all the dirt up to a level that they know they're not going to get everything, but they're going to get most of what they want, if not all of what they really want. So then instead of just going for a reasonable goal, they cause a firestorm by raising the target way up at the top of the ceiling, because they know that when the dust settles, they're going to be at exactly where they want to be. So Trump does this. He creates these firestorms, and everybody says, "Oh my God," and what happens is when the dust settles, it's at where he wanted it to be right from the beginning. But he knew he couldn't ask that right from the beginning, because you get even less. Yeah. So, so what his ultimate goal is, whether it's, border security or better relations in terms of trade, or what it is, the real goal is, he likes to stir up these firestorms and get everybody talking. Because now everybody's talking. I notice all these people. If you notice on X, Cynthia and I are both on X. I notice a lot of Canadians have the Canadian flag on their thing, meaning they're going to stay Canadian and all this. And you know what? That's all great. But that's exactly what he wants. That's exactly what he wants. So, well, what's your opinion about it? I know you like the attention media factor.
Yeah, he's not stupid. He's like the man who screams wolf, and it's a kitten, just to make sure everybody shows up with the right amount of ammunition. And it's just like, he kind of cracks it. But, he does know what he's doing in that regard. Like, you can hate him all you want, but he does create chaos, and it usually settles into him getting what he actually was going for. So I've learned with him, when he's like going, woo, it's like there's actually a really real reason in there. He's just distracting people a little bit to get people at the chess pieces in place. So, it's fun. The next 4 years are going to be so much fun. Have we ever had a president that wasn't trying to like work his future?
Yes. Very interesting times for sure. Cash is going to be the next, see what happens there. Kash Patel on that nomination. So anyway, if you're new to the program, we always wrap up by talking what we each are doing. Cynthia, what are you up to these days?
I'm on the speaking tour. I'm going to be in Austin on March 6th, giving a speech at the Wellbeing at Work Summit, and then in Chicago, May 1st, at the Wellbeing at Work Summit, talking about wellness in the workplace. And I'm at the New Life Expo, giving a speech on consciousness in Florida and in New York at the end of March. So lots to do. Check shamanisis.com to find out about my different events. I've got a lot of book signings too. So go check it out, shamanisis.com, and you can follow me on social media at shamanisis.
That is fantastic. You can find me, Billy Dees, kind of. My social media home probably is X, which is the former Twitter. But it's not the only place we are. We have refocused our attention as far as social media goes to the Billy Dees podcast page on Facebook. And those are the two primary places that we are concentrating on social media. I made the decision this year that some of the peripheral ones I just can't spend a lot of time on. We're there, but we concentrate our efforts on X and on the Billy Dees Facebook page. As far as the podcast itself, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on any podcast platform. We are on them all. We have, in this current form, the incarnation of the Billy Dees podcast that, as it stands now, is 10 years old. So we have a 10-year history. We were involved in this long before it was the hip thing to do. As a matter of fact, prior to that, I can remember doing what we refer to as podcasts and stuff like that way, way, way before. 2012 was a pivotal year. If you look into the history of podcasting, was a pivotal year. We had a sitting president and some other things do interviews on podcasts. And prior to that, we were doing this. So, and media in general, I mean, I go back way, way back. And like, he's too far back, like as in tape. So do check us out, the Billy Dees podcast, on your favorite podcast platform. We had an episode, check it out in the playlist, with a young woman named Stephanie, who is seriously injured doesn't even begin to describe it, by a drunk driver. This drunk driver had beer cans on the floor of the car. And as so often happens, he got a slap on the wrist. And he altered her life forever. She is now an advocate for crash survivors. She has been on the podcast periodically over the years. And it's interesting because her views and some things have changed, and she talks about that during our podcast. We did this as a space live, and it was converted into a podcast. But there's different speakers. We have people that come on and talk. Rachel Thompson is one of them. There's a couple of other people that do come into this space and ask her questions and make comments about their own experiences and stuff. So that's available in the playlist, and that episode has been very successful, and a lot of people their hearts have really gone out to her. So do check that out. That's in the playlist. The night that a drunk driver changed her life forever, Stephanie's story. That's in the playlist now. All right. Well, Cynthia, we're going to wait and see what happens here. Every day is a new story. And we'll have a lot to talk about next week, I'm sure. So as always, Cynthia, thank you so much for co-hosting.
Thank you, Billy.
Absolutely. And until next time, take care of yourself, and we will talk to you again very, very soon. Bye.
Do you listen to music or audiobooks on streaming devices such as Sonos or Amazon speakers? How about on your car sound system? If you use Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music on any of these systems, you can also listen to the Billy Dees podcast the same way. Billy and his team go the extra mile to make sure our podcasts sound as good or better than anything on the radio. Listening to the Billy Dees podcast has never been easier. You literally just have to ask.